2023 is finally over, and 2024 has begun. A new year means new prospects, new challenges, and for me, new games to play. Looking back at 2023, it was one of the years of all time. I played a grand total of 72 games, ranging from amazing to downright awful. And I thought it'd be interesting to rank these games, find out which was the best, the worst, and the middle of the road. In this extremely long video, we're going to go over all of these games, starting with my top 10 favourite games, then the ones I would recommend or have mixed feelings on, and finally wrapping it up with the worst of the worst. This isn't simply going to be a list of games released in 2023, so some classics are bound to pop up here. I really do not have the money to pay for every new release. And finally, there's going to be some people who obviously will disagree with me and my picks. If you have any thoughts on my rankings and wish to discuss it, then let's talk in the comments. So, without any further delay, let's get started with the top 10 best games. At the number 10 spot, I have Red Dead Redemption 1. I remember only playing half of this back when it first came out, and mostly used it for multiplayer with the boys. And before you ask, no, I did not buy the remaster. Instead, I got up off my arse, touched some grass, went to a local Sweaty CX shop, and bought a PS3 copy. And I still think it holds up really well. The gameplay is incredibly fun, and doesn't throw a lot of ridiculous things at you to manage like its sequel/prequel does. It's just fun, riding around the Wild West being a gunslinging badass. But I do have a few gripes, and the biggest one has to do with the story. I like the characters, especially John Marston, and it still has that goofy rockstar charm to it.
A glass eye! It's a glass eye! Stop!
But the actual plot and story beats are just not the best. You spend the majority of the game tracking down your ex-gang members, but in order to do that, you have to get involved with stuff that just goes on for far too long. Then when you finally do track down the gang members, it's not even satisfying to take them out. Well, probably with the exception of Dutch.
We are gonna sail to Tahiti.
Maybe it didn't help that I played Red Dead Redemption 2 before this, and expected the story of this one to be better, if not similar to that one. But oh well, I still really like the game. Number 9 goes to It Takes Two. I talked about this one in one of my tier list videos, so I won't say too much. I thought that this was just a ton of fun from start to finish. The biggest highlight for me was the variety of gameplay it introduced. Like in one level you'd be playing a parody of a fighting game, the next you'd be doing a dungeon crawler. The co-op aspect is also as strong as ever, and me and my partner had a really great time with it. I just wish the story was better. Cody and May are horrible people. It takes ages to get to the main plot, and the ending doesn't really wrap everything up in a satisfying way for me. Despite the shortcomings, I really like it, and can see why it won Game of the Year. If you want more thoughts on this one, head on over to my tier list video. Number 8 is Kena Bridge of Spirits, another great game that I talked about in a tier list video. To say this is Ember Labs' first game, it's a really good one to start off with. It's got a charming art style, an enchanting soundtrack, challenging but not unfair gameplay, and a good story with a lot of lore behind it. The only thing I would have wanted to see is more development for our lead, but she wasn't completely bland, and I liked her journey. Once again, if you want extended thoughts, check out the tier list video that I made. At number 7, I have Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. I played all of the Uncharted games this year, so don't worry, they'll all be cropping up somewhere in this video, but Uncharted 2 was one of the best. Gameplay is similar coming off of the first and hasn't changed much besides a few combat things, but climbing still sucks and doesn't really get any better no matter how many grapple hooks you add. The story is the highlight of this one though. The stakes are high, the characters are amazing, especially my wife Chloe Fraser, the villains are intimidating as hell, and it's satisfying from start to finish. I still think about the story and its characters and really want to go back and revisit it at some point, but this game isn't the best out of the series. No, That title goes to our number 6 spot. Number 6 is Uncharted 4. It's without a doubt the best in the series, no question, and I know that's going to piss a lot of fans off, but I don't really care. It has the best story, best character moments, best set pieces, and best traversal even if it's still a bit clunky. I like how the gameplay has seen quite a number of improvements like stealth and the grapple hook. I don't really have any huge complaints about this game, it was a ton of fun. So, yeah, moving on.
Is that it?
Number 5 goes to Cat Quest 2. I found out about the Cat Quest series through a YouTuber called Mystic when I watched one of his many Platinum Challenge videos, so shout out to him. I played through the first one and enjoyed it thoroughly, and saw there was a sequel which I loved even more than the first. It's got a cute art style, addictive RPG gameplay, amusing if sometimes cringy humour. I mean, take a shot every time they make a cat pun and you'll be pissed in no time. The addition of co-op has to be my favourite inclusion though. Me and my partner loved every minute of this and had so much fun playing it together. Honestly, if you haven't played this, please give it a go, it's a really good time. Number 4 ironically goes to the Resident Evil 4 remake. Even though I do think that this remake is kinda pointless, especially because you can play Resident Evil 4 anywhere and everywhere now, I was surprised at just how much Capcom had nailed it. They somehow managed to combine the style of the recent 2 remakes, but also blended the goofy, over-the-top action of the original game extremely well. I don't really have that much else to add. It's that good, and so many people have talked about this game to death already. It's a great time from start to finish, and I think that it may even be better than the original in many ways. Just don't think about Ada's performance too much.
The deal was, we get you out of
Oh!
here. No Amber.
Dude! What the fuck?
Okay, so now we're in the top 3, and coming in at number 3 is Sleeping Dogs, the first ever game I reviewed on this channel. As I mentioned in my review, it's one of the most underrated games ever made. It's not a masterpiece and there's a lot of things I don't like about it, but I just had an absolute blast with it. I love the kung fu arcade feeling combat, the over-the-top driving mechanics and the atmosphere of the world.
Why don't you have a pork bun in your hand?
If you haven't had the chance to experience this, please pick it up, and hopefully we can get a sequel at some point. Maybe. Probably not. Just missing out of the top spot at number 2 is A Way Out. I honestly did not expect to love this as much as I did, and was pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of unique and downright genius gameplay gimmicks, like the split-screen gameplay and the focus on co-op. I find that this simple addition makes the gameplay stand out and feel as unique as possible, allowing you and your co-op partner to have a lot of funny moments together. I know we definitely did. But for me, the story is the highlight. Leo and Vincent's journey to right their wrongs for the betterment of those closest to them is touching, and I rooted for them all the way through. Add in a few comedic moments for extra levity, and a soul-crushing ending that just punches you in the gut. Yeah man, I love this game. I loved it so much that I decided to make a video on the whole game. I really like the way that video turned out, so if you want to hear some extended thoughts, give it a watch. So Sam, if you love A Way Out so much, why isn't it a number 1? What could have possibly beaten it? Well, let's take a look at my number 1 pick. When I think of what a game needs to do to make me fall in love with it, I find that it needs to be both gripping and entertaining at the same time. You can have a ton of fun doing the tiniest of tasks and be immersed in its world, characters and story. And in 2023, no game did that better for me than Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't just a game for me, it was an experience. Everything from the graphics to the characters to the music and world was just so incredibly well put together. The journey that you go on with Arthur, Dutch, Sadie, John, Charles, and others, not you. is one of the best video game stories you'll ever experience. Don't get me wrong, the story is not flawless. I don't think that Guarma section is all that good and kind of kills the pacing a little bit, especially after Chapter 4's ending. I also don't feel like a lot of the character stories got the respectful amount of closure they should have had, and a few missions do feel like it's just there for padding. Gameplay wise, I liked it. I love the way the guns sound and feel to use, as well as the traversal with your horse. However, I think the world and its design just takes the cake for me. It's beautiful, and there were times where I would just stop and take in the scenery right before a bear would viciously attack me. I can't say I like how restricted the gameplay is sometimes though, with you having to constantly manage your horse and cause or risk your stats being hindered by it. I get that it makes it realistic, but I'd rather have a game give me fun over how realistic it can get. Now you might be thinking that this sounds more like a mixed bag than a go-to game. Why is this at number 1? Well, let me put it this way. When I finished the game and saw those credits roll where John Marston and fam say goodbye to Charles and Sadie, I felt like I was in his shoes. I spent so long with these characters, fighting beside them and building up connections that I felt connected to them. When they shared pain, so did I. When they celebrated, so did I. That's just not good character writing. That's art. And that's why Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best game that I played all year.
But wait, there's more.
Right, so now we're on to the middle of the road. These are the games that weren't the best nor the worst, and are categorised as recommend, recommixed, and mixed. There's not going to be a lot of in-depth analysis with these, and we're essentially just going to do a Jeff Keighley lightning round.
Very much, guys. Great announcement. All right, awesome. Thanks, nigga. All right.
What did he
Now,
say?
please welcome the
So, let's go over the recommended games first. Deliver Us the Moon was a fun, short experience. The gameplay is minimal, with just a few puzzles to solve in a third-person format. Nothing too fancy or that we haven't seen before. The story was what hooked me though. I wanted to find out what happened to the station, where its inhabitants were, and how it got into this mess. It has just enough to keep you going till the credits, and I'd say it's worth it. If you're one of those weirdos like me that love the inventory management system from Resident Evil 4, then Save Room is basically just that over 40 levels. It's a simple game and can be completed in about half an hour, less if you're following a guide. But the thing I love about it the most is the sheer love for Resident Evil 4. The background looks the same as it did in the original RE4, and some of the trophy titles are literally quotes from the infamous merchant. If you like Resident Evil or inventory management in general, then this one is definitely for you. I think I bought 3 Jackbox Party Packs in 2023, and each one is an absolute ton of fun with friends. If you don't have any friends, I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't sure if I should have merged separate ways with the full game, but oh well. This is good DLC. It's fun, fills in some of the gaps of the main game, and gives us some more time with Ada Wong, even if Lily Gal still sucks. I think I read somewhere online that people have a problem with the price, but I definitely think it's worth it. Would I have liked it to have been free like in the original? Oh, of course. But the amount of content more than makes up for it. A 2023 release that I kind of enjoyed. The combat is fast with a variety of ways to decimate the zombie horde. You can slash, whack, sucker punch, or my personal favourite, dive kick zombies out of the way, and it's satisfying every time. The story is a different, story. It's honestly quite bad. From cliches like being immune and the chosen one, to annoying characters around every corner, to an ending that would give Kane and Lynch 2 a run for its money, it's not great. However, I would still recommend this for the fun factor alone. I already talked about Bioshock 2 in a tier list video that I made, and I'm probably still in the small minority that prefers this over the original. I prefer the gameplay and it feels less restrictive, but I can't deny that the story is a snooze fest compared to the absolute brilliance of the first game. Still, I prefer this one over the original, sue me. And now to add more fuel to the fire, this is the best Bioshock game. Like I said in a tier list video, it combines all elements of all 3 games and comes out on top. The story is engaging, the combat is satisfying, the setting is amazing. Yeah, this is the best one for me. Sorry not sorry, Bioshock fans. I already talked about LEGO Batman 1 in a previous video. It's a great nostalgic game, made me feel like a kid again, and I think TT Games should make more games where the characters mumble instead of talk. LEGO Batman 2, same reason as the first LEGO Batman really, but this time they added an open world which is fun to explore. Seriously though, those flying controls. I really liked the original Destroy All Humans. It's a fun game with a lot of charm and adult humour, but it is quite dated by today's standards, which is why we've luckily got the remake. It's a good time, if a bit annoying in some areas, and that PS2 charm is just, oh, so good. The first Uncharted is a really good start despite its short length. Even though some of the gameplay is pretty standard and the climbing really sucks, I would definitely recommend this for the story and characters alone. Nate, Sully and Elena are without a doubt some of the best written characters in gaming, and this is where it all started. If you're thinking about getting into Uncharted, give this one a go, you won't regret it. From the first Uncharted game to now the latest Uncharted game. The Lost Legacy is a satisfying side story similar to Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's short but doesn't feel rushed and is a very tightly condensed package. Gameplay is more or less the same as Uncharted 4, but I mean, if it ain't broke. And the story was also very well done with good character moments and an actual decent villain, which is quite rare for Uncharted. The exploration parts of this game though are the standouts to me. Driving around a small map, looking for treasure and fighting bad guys was a ton of fun. Yep, this is a good one, check it out. Scott Pilgrim is yet again one that I've already talked about in a previous video. Even though I suck at beat 'em ups, there is still a lot to love about this one. I think the soundtrack is outstanding, the visuals are unique, and the charm is just, muy caliente. Definitely a good time, especially with friends. Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat reboot, Mortal Kombat 2011, Mortal Kombat 9, whichever way you want to call it. This was my introduction to the Mortal Kombat series, but I haven't played it in so long, so this was almost a brand new experience for me, and I still think it holds up really well. The gameplay is simple enough for new players to get a hang of, but doesn't restrict the more experienced players from just unleashing hell. And I still think the story is good, with a lot of stakes on the line. But I can't help but feel that some of the chapters are just there for padding. Also, the Shao Kahn boss fights. Mortal Kombat 1 is yet again another game that I've already talked about in a previous video, but just as a summary, yeah, I liked it. I like the new and unique takes on the characters, and the gameplay is fresh but also familiar for returning players. My own personal gripes with multiversal time travel stories and the obscene microtransactions in the store aside, I would check this one out. Undertale, yes, I finally got around to playing this game. Talk about 8 years too late. I really wish I had played this sooner. It's so funny and charming, but can also hit you on an emotional level sometimes. I also thought I wouldn't like the gameplay, but that turned out to be fun and challenging, which was a huge surprise. I can see why it's revered as a classic amongst so many people, and if you haven't played this, I urge you to experience this at least once. I don't expect many people to know what Pumpkin Jack is, but I highly recommend it. If you like medieval or other third-person gothic horror action games, I would recommend this short experience. Concrete Genie is another revered game that I'm only just getting around to playing for the first time. The gameplay is solid and you'll be using motion controls for a majority of your time to paint your canvases, but don't worry, you can easily turn this off. I like the story in this one and how it shows that people aren't as one-dimensional as they appear to be. It has a lot of good lessons behind it. And finally, to round off the recommended section, we have The Artful Escape, also known as the biggest LCD trip you can go on without taking a single gram. Gameplay is very minimal and just has you walking in a straight line and pressing a few buttons when required, but the story is what kept me going. A story about identity, who you want to be, and the struggle of expectations. If you want to check this one out, I'd recommend it for the story alone. Alright, so now we're on to Recomixed. These are the games that I do recommend, but also have some mixed feelings on. Hence, Recomixed. I know I'm really smart, aren't I? The Skywalker Saga has a lot of good ideas and gameplay moments sprinkled throughout. There's a huge amount of iconic Star Wars characters for you to unlock, ships to fly, planets to explore, you get to experience every single main Star Wars episode, and it has the typical charm that these games are just so amazing at. However, there's a lot of stuff I find holds it back. For example, I don't like how short the actual levels are. You can easily complete them all in about 4 hours. The third person gunplay is very hit and miss for me. And finally, there is just simply too much to do for so little a reward. But it's okay, because the mumbles are back! I like the LEGO games and Star Wars, and even though the complete saga is still the quintessential GOAT, this one is a good enough time. Oh boy, here we go. BioShock. As I mentioned before when talking about its sequel, BioShock's story is amazing. The world building is incredible and actually made me want to collect audio logs for a change. The story has a lot of memorable moments and characters to boot, and how can we forget that twist? What a reveal! But the gameplay is just, it's kinda, how do I say, it sucks. Alright, I'm sorry, but it just sucks. Annoyingly spongy enemies, guns that just feel useless to use, a stupid hacking minigame that is sometimes impossible to complete, and the f***ing turrets! Definitely stay for the story, but the gameplay is terrible. Change my mind. LEGO Batman 3 is definitely the weakest out of the 3 LEGO Batman games, but that doesn't mean it's awful. It's a fun time to play through and collecting bricks and characters is always a blast, but this one is very underwhelming. From collecting characters that have the same animations and powers, to grinding out the Adam West collectible only for him just to be a normie with a few funny animations, yeah, it's very underwhelming. But like I said, it's still a ton of fun. Hey, it's a LEGO game, what more do you want? I still want to make a video on Alan Wake at some point, so I won't go too much into it. But just as a summary, I find the story is confusing and in some cases quite comical.
We should go to the sheriff or call the FBI.
Damn it, Barry, they'll kill her!
Gameplay is very repetitive with you doing the same things across all chapters. Combat is unique in concept but mediocre in execution. However, I still think it's worth checking out. It's a different kind of experience that I think people should at least give a chance. Someday I'll get to work on that review. Someday. Out of all of the modern Mortal Kombat games, I think MKX has the best gameplay. It's fast, brutal to watch and listen to, and has some of the best characters on the roster. Also, the run feature. I like the run feature. The story, on the other hand, is just jumbling way too much, and most of it doesn't work. There are a lot of cool ideas, but a majority of them just simply do not work, and are overshadowed by other more important events. Still, I have a soft spot for this game and do recommend it. And finally, to finish off Wrecker Mixed, we have What Remains of Edith Finch. Now straight away, it's a walking simulator, and I know that a lot of people will be instantly turned off by that. But much like BioShock, the story is what you should stay around for. The mystery of what happened to the Finch family and how we got to this point kept me intrigued, despite the minimal gameplay. If you want a short 2-hour experience, give it a try. And now we've come to the penultimate section, the games that I felt most mixed about. One Night Stand has a very unique concept. You wake up in a stranger's bed and have to figure out how you got there and who they are. It has a unique art style which I find hard to describe, and a lot of different endings that you can get. But besides from that, there's not a lot else to talk about. It's fine and easy to complete. Yeah, that's all I got. Up next is Freddy Spaghetti. Yep, I'm being serious. It's dumb and funny, but loses its charm after a while. Now here's a surprising one. I really don't think this is as good as people say. It's definitely not the worst Call of Duty game by far. I mean, you know, Vanguard still exists. But this is what people regard as the best modern COD game. Gameplay does feel somewhat different, and I do like the way it all feels, but the story is just okay for me. People say this story is one of the best COD campaigns ever made, and I just can't help but think we were playing a different game. I may have to give the campaign another go, but for now this is definitely a mixed game. The titles for these games are always such a mouthful. I've played all of these games with a group of friends, and each time we really get into it. Each one of us is trying so hard to remain alive. but this one just didn't do it for me. I just couldn't connect to the characters or the plot, and just lost interest halfway through. The only reason I finished it was due to my mates, so thanks guys. Here's another surprising entry, Black Flag. I just think this is okay. It's definitely one of the better Assassin's Creed games, and this is coming from someone who doesn't really like the franchise all that much. In my opinion, for every positive in the game, there's a con right around the corner. The combat is fun and the moment-to-moment gameplay is good, but the mission design is just horrible, especially the just absurd amount of trailing missions. The characters are engaging and have some good moments, but they are half-cooked and lack enough development to make me care for them the way the game wants me to. After writing this, I can safely say this deserves to be in mixed. The original Dead Island is one of those games where it starts off incredibly fun and engaging, but slowly deteriorates into something that feels repetitive and outstays its welcome. On top of that, you have a story that I've just seen before, and gameplay that can get a bit annoying after a while. However, I'd still maybe give it a go. After playing Get Out of Hell, I can see why the Saints Row series was rebooted. If you like Saints Row 4 and the superpowers that game gave you to mess around with, then you'll like this. It's just a bit on the short side. The last Uncharted game in this video, and the one I have the most problems with. Gameplay is just the same. There are no improvements or anything new and different besides the Arkham style melee combat. And the climbing also still sucks. Wow, big shocker. But the biggest con for me is the story. Unfocused narrative with characters coming to and from with no satisfying resolution to their story. Charlie Kerr. Terrible villains and a treasure that I just didn't care about. If you like Uncharted, you'll probably like this, just don't expect anything amazing. This game reminded me why I hate time travel stories. They're messy and so confusing. On top of that, the writers for some reason just decided to do away with all the setups and potential plot lines from MKX in favour of just bringing dead characters back to life. This is easily the worst modern MK game story-wise. How about the gameplay? It's alright. Fatal blows are pretty irritating, especially when your opponent has just a slither of health left, and then suddenly they just pull this out of their ass. Oh, and guess what? They removed the run feature. Why? Aftermath's story is so much better than the main game. There are actual stakes with consequences for decisions made, and it's quite fun playing from the villain's perspective for a change. Also, Sindel. Mummy. This one is very outdated, and I'm sorry to say I did not have a good time with it. If you like old school platformers with clunky controls but a unique art style, then this one's for you. One of the only few positives that I'll give it is that it was a quick and easy platinum. And finally, to round off mixed, we have perhaps the saddest inclusion in this category. Well, for me anyways. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I want to express my full feelings in a number of videos that I've got planned, but all I'll say is that it told me a lot about hype, expectations, and paying £200 for a collector's edition.
Yeah, but that backflip though.
So, we've made it to the end of the road. We are at the worst of the worst. The 10 games that made me feel betrayal, anger, frustration, sadness, and boredom. Some of you may like these games, hell, you may even love them. But for me, these were like experiencing a triple vasectomy with a rusty scalpel. Anyways, now that you've got that lovely image in your head, let's talk about them. Once again, I am not an Assassin's Creed fan, but I do think that there are some good elements in these games. Unfortunately, in Assassin's Creed 3, there were very little of those good elements. Whilst the combat is standard with these older titles in the series and doesn't have any major changes, the other elements are just so frustratingly bad. Take the climbing for example, a staple of the series. Surprisingly, it's very limited. About 50% of the game will see you on the ground running across battlefields or tailing NPCs as usual, the f***ing tailing missions. And when you do finally get to climb, the controls are just so awkward and unsatisfying. You'll also find yourself climbing trees rather than scaling buildings. I also really did not care for this game's story at all. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's poorly done. The Desmond stuff is still as slow and boring as ever, with a dreadful conclusion to his arc. And Connor's revenge story and personality is about as interesting as a stale bowl of porridge. I do like Hatham. Hatham was fun, why wasn't he the lead? There are interesting ideas, but not enough to call it good. I was originally going to make a video on Bulletstorm way back in July, I think, and in that review I called it a strange, cringy thrill ride. I still think that sentiment is true. Bulletstorm is at its best when you're getting points for the craziest kills possible. Racking up those points in the most brutal fashion and using them for upgrades and ammo is a unique concept, and without a doubt the highlight of this game. But that's the only positive I can give it. The story, if you can even call it that, is nothing but pure-filled cringe from start to end, and honestly feels like it was written by a 10-year-old who just discovered what boobs are. It's full of pathetic juvenile humour with terribly written dialogue, and pacing that makes Spider-Man 2 look good. I still remember those opening 30 minutes and how incredibly rushed it felt, with so much shit being thrown at you before you had time to ask any questions. I might make a video on the story at some point, hey, who knows. I don't have a lot to say about Donuts and Justice. It was an extremely short game that I didn't enjoy. Moving on. Oh boy, this one can hardly be classed as a game. It's just a simple FMV game with no variation or entertainment besides from just how poorly made it is. Depending on when you're watching this, I made a review on it and just how bizarre this thing is. If you have the time, give it a watch. Football Game is one of the games in this section that just bored me to tears. I can't tell you a single thing about the story, gameplay or characters because they were so god-awfully boring that I just didn't care to remember anything about them. The only thing I do remember from this game is just how ugly the whole thing looked. Yeah. I thought Paw 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 sounded interesting when I first found it. A furry version of Castle Crashers where you have to stop a corrupted bunny king from forcing everyone to wear trousers? What the f? I expected this to be a fun time. Except I didn't expect the level of bullshit that this game emitted. This game falls into that category of being difficult and unfair for no reason. From bosses having stupid attack moves that you can't predict, to mechanics that softlock you until you die. This was excruciating to get through. Even after lowering the difficulty down to the easiest, it still felt like I was playing on medium or hard. Maybe I just suck. I don't care, to hell with this game. I remember playing the first Life is Strange game and enjoying it somewhat. I thought it was a decent story-based game in the vein of Telltale Games' success. After years of first playing it and forgetting most about the story, I thought I'd give it another go. And I honestly don't know why I thought this game was any good. Everything about this game infuriated me. The characters are the most brain-dead pieces of shit I've ever seen, making dumb choices and being unlikable assholes. The plot is so cliche and filled with cringy lines like hella and shaka bra that it just makes you want to go play in traffic. And then the ending. Oh, the fucking ending. It completely destroys the story. None of your choices matter in the end and you're just left with an A or B choice. And finally, Chloe Price. One of the worst characters ever written, period. She is so unlikable that by the time episode 2 ended, she had sucked what little enjoyment I was having out of my body.
Goodbye, cruel bumper.
But there are things I like about it, such as the music. I like the music, and the fact it's an easy plat. Yeah, that's it. The only big compliment I can give it is that it's not as bad as my top 3 worst games. Why don't we see what they are? I'm sick of talking about this f***ing game. Okay, let's get this over with. Saints Row 2022 is a perfect example of what modern video games have resorted to. The series, once heralded as a rival to the mega giant GTA with its wacky gameplay and fun factor, was turned into a hollow shell of its former self with arcade-feeling gameplay, a bland open world, and a dreadful story with the most punchable characters ever created. I cannot fathom the right words to truly express my distaste for this game. It truly is a product that deserves to be studied by aspiring game developers as a prime example of how not to make a video game. This game is a tragic disaster that nobody asked for in the first place, and Volition and Deep Silver deserved all the backlash that they received for this monstrosity. It's a sad end to a franchise that I hold deep and near to my heart. I have fond memories of Saints Row 1 to 4 and love my time with most of them. Playing through the story, creating an abomination of a character, going through the activity levels and becoming the ultimate gangster. Now that Volition is gone, it looks like those times are over, and the series may never be coming back. I guess the only huge positive I can give it is that my review on it is my highest rated video so far. So that's cool, thanks everyone. But if you think this was bad, you ain't even seen number 2. Dead Rising 4, yay! If you thought the Saints Row reboot bastardized the series it was a part of, then let me introduce you to Dead Rising 4, the most recent and probably last entry in the Capcom zombie slaying series, and it went out with a deafening whimper. The game can be fun at times with its typical Dead Rising humour and zombie slaying gameplay, but the skeleton of the series was the only thing that was carried over. All of the meat and bones are replaced with something truly ugly. Firstly, I was so shocked to see just how much of what made Dead Rising unique was cut from this one. Saints Row at least kept the core gameplay structure that it was known for, but this just feels barren compared to its predecessors. The time feature, one of the most unique aspects of the series, is completely removed, and you can have as much time as you want. No psychopaths. Yeah, those encounters with crazy survivors and their wacky personalities, yeah, they're completely gone. No survivor escort missions, no mixed juices for special abilities, no TJ Rotolo as Frank West, no going to the bathroom to save, and we can seriously just keep going if you've got time. Oh, and speaking of Frank West, this guy is not Frank West. He is a juvenile imposter who is Frank West only by name. He never took any situation seriously and lacked the charm that the actual Frank West has. I always saw Frank West as a down on his luck hero. He's a bit of a sleazeball who is mostly in it for himself. However, when the chips are down, he can take charge, and uses his wits to survive, turn himself into a full-blown badass, and he says some of the cheesiest but coolest one-liners that would make Leon S. Kennedy say, "Damn!" It's incredibly sad that this is how Dead Rising most likely goes out. Capcom Vancouver, the studio that makes the games, was shut down following this game's release, and the planned Dead Rising 5 was also dropped. I hope this franchise makes a resurgence in one way or another, but I can't help but feel that this is one franchise that unfortunately won't rise back from the dead. Oh yeah, we got to talk about number 1. Let me ask you a question. What makes a game terrible in your eyes? Is it the awfully written story that makes you want to pluck your eyes from their sockets? Or is it the gameplay just not being fun? Well, for me, it's down to one simple word. Boredom. In any form of entertainment, if you're bored, then the creators have messed up big time. They failed to grab your attention, hold it to the end, and take you on a meaningful journey. All of these games that I've talked about managed to keep me invested from start to finish. Yes, even the 2 I've just talked about. However, the game in the number 1 spot failed at this dramatically, so much so that I felt my soul leave my body whilst I played this painful experience. The game I'm referring to you may shock some, and is actually from a franchise I've already spoken about in this video. My number 1 worst game that I played in 2023 is Life is Strange Before the Storm. I cannot put into words how dead inside this game made me feel, but I'll try anyways. It's a prequel to the first game and centres on everyone's favourite piece of cancer, Chloe Price.
Good start.
The plot of this game revolves around Chloe Price's meeting with the dead girl from the first game and how they became friends. Oh yeah, there's also something about the dead girl's mum coming back and her dad lying to her, but I really just did not care. Throughout the game, you get to make choices that impact the story and the characters around you. But much like the first game, none of it matters because you just once again have an A or B ending. And on the topic of no choice matter in this game, that's it. None of it does. Does any of this segue into the first game in a satisfying way? Fuck no. It feels like its own separate story, but with a few characters from the first game sprinkled in for the people that took the member berries. This is my biggest problem with the game. It's pointless. Why does the conflict between the dead girl and her parents matter? I'll tell you the answer. It doesn't matter because she's dead at the start of the first game. Why were all the side characters from the first game included in this story? Because look, the kid that killed Chloe Price is here. Do you remember him? Why am I making all these choices if none of it f***ing matters by the end of the game? Oh yeah, and the gameplay. It's the exact same as the first. But now there's a rap battle mechanic that you can do or something. I don't f***ing care at this point. Look, games, much like any form of entertainment, need to have a purpose to exist. Whether this be a creator desperate to tell a story, or a designer wanting to make something fun to bring people together, this is the power of entertainment. But when garbage like this exists, where you know people pour time and effort into something so hollow, it hurts not just them, but the person experiencing the product. Before the Shitstorm is a prime example of a nothing product, something made to just capitalise off of the success of its predecessor. It's shallow, tedious, and the biggest sin of all, boring. And that is why it's my worst game of 2023, and probably one of the worst games I have ever played. Whew, we made it, boys. Those are my rankings for all 72 games that I played in 2023, from the very best to the absolute worst. This was a hell of a long video to make, but I hoped everyone enjoyed my takes and hearing my opinions. Looking back at last year, I'm happy at the variety of stuff that I played. Classics that I'm only just getting around to playing, new modern AAA releases for... That's the police. New modern AAA releases for better or worse, indie games galore, and oh, wait, I've missed one. Lady in a leotard with a gun. Surely that's not real. Let me just search for it. There we go. Oh, it is real. Well, I don't remember playing this. Let's have a look at the trailer. Oh no, what is this? No, stop, make it stop, so quick, no!